Hello and welcome. Starting with our top story, it is the final countdown to the general election in South Africa. Now, the May 29th election looks set to be the most tightly contested since the end of apartheid. So who are the key faces in South Africa's general election? Let's take a look. Starting with Cyril Ramaphosa of the African National Congress. 71-year-old Ramaphosa is hoping for another term as president. He rose to prominence in the 1980s as a union leader. In 1991, when he became an ANC Secretary General, he was a leading negotiator in talks with South Africa's then white minority government that led to the end of apartheid and the beginning of democracy in 1994. In 2017, he took over as the ANC leader and as president in 2018, leading the party to victory in the 2019 national election. In 2022, Ramaphosa was embroiled in a scandal after the theft of over $500,000 in cash from his farm, which raised questions about the origin of the funds. But he still won re-election as the ANC leader that year. Ramaphosa denies any wrongdoing and has so far not been charged with any offence. Ramaphosa and the African National Congress have been under immense pressure. High unemployment, corruption allegations, and frequent power cuts have reduced its popularity. But the ANC is promising to turn this around. It has promised to create millions of jobs over the next 5 years, to boost investment, support private sector, and end corruption. Next is Jacob Zuma, who Ramaphosa had replaced as the ANC leader in 2017 after a corruption scandal. The 82-year-old former president is a veteran of the anti-apartheid struggle. Zuma was jailed for 10 years with Nelson Mandela by the white minority regime. Over the years, Zuma rose through the ranks and became South Africa's president in 2009. But in 2018, he was forced to step down owing to a public inquiry into government corruption. He was sentenced to 15 months in jail in 2021 for defying a court order to provide evidence. The veteran leader, however, is now openly hostile to the ANC leadership. He has thrown his weight behind his newly formed MK party, which is named after the ANC's former armed wing from apartheid years. In the latest, Zuma was barred by court from running for parliament due to his prison sentence, but his name will still appear on the ballot paper as leader of the MK party. In its manifesto, Zuma promises employment and free education to the country's youth. He also pledged to change the constitution to restore more powers to traditional leaders. The third key face in South Africa's political race is John Steenhuisen. The 48-year-old is the leader of the opposition Democratic Alliance. Steenhuisen has been active in politics from a young age. At 22, he was elected as a DA city councillor in Durban. He then became a member of the Provincial Assembly in KwaZulu-Natal before entering National Assembly in 2011. In 2019, he became the party leader after two of its most senior black leaders resigned, one of them citing difficulties expanding the DA's appeal beyond its traditionally white base. But Steenhuisen rejects criticism that the DA is a party of white privilege. However, he still faces skepticism over who the party truly represents. The Democratic Alliance promises to liberalize the economy, including a greater move towards privatization. Steenhuisen has vowed to create 2 million new jobs, end power cuts, and halve the rate of violent crime. Another face in the election is Julius Malema. Often labeled a firebrand, Malema is a former leader of the ANC's youth wing. He was suspended in 2011 by the party's disciplinary committee, after which he set up the Economic Freedom Fighters, or the EFF, which advocates seizing land from white farmers to redistribute to black people. Apart from politics, this firebrand leader's penchant for flashy cars, gold watches and other trappings of wealth is also well documented. In 2015, a court threw out money laundering charges against him because of delays. Julius Malema and the economic freedom fighters are to address unemployment and inequality. The EFF has radical economic solutions. It wants to redistribute land to the less well-off. It also wants to nationalize mines, banks, and other key parts of the economy. Nearly 28 million South Africans will vote in the upcoming election. Opinion polls say the ruling African National Congress may lose its majority for the first time after 30 years in power. The African National Congress is still expected to win the largest share of the vote, so President Cyril Ramaphosa is likely to remain in office, unless he faces an internal challenge within the party. If the ANC falls short of a majority, it will have to negotiate a coalition. It could even form a deal with other smaller parties, depending on the share of votes that it gets. Now, earlier today, I spoke to Naren Singh, the National Campaigns Committee chairperson and the Treasurer General of the Inkatha Freedom Party. Naren Singh, who is also the chief whip of the IFP in the National Assembly, says the 29th of May election is the most crucial for South Africa since the dawn of democracy. He also elaborated on South Africa's future with coalitions at the national level and the key issues this election. Here's the full conversation. Considering the elections are just more than a week away, how do you see the national picture evolving for the IFP, and what role do you envision the party playing in shaping South Africa's political landscape?
Oh, thank you for that, Kristen. Yeah, it's just 7 days to go, and it's going to be D-Day for many of us. This is going to be a very, very interesting election since the dawn of democracy in 1994 because of the split in the African National Congress, the fact that many new parties have come on board and many new leaders who belong to prominent parties have now formed their own parties. So I think after 30 years, this is really going to be the litmus test for South Africa as we move forward. For the IFP, we are pretty confident that we will do much better than we've done before. And that's born out of the fact that our rallies have gone on very well. Our message has been well received by the public. And by and large, the groups that we try and entice to vote for us are fed up with the ruling party and the lack of governance and the corruption and the load shedding, and there's so many other things, and they're looking for an alternative. And we are pleased to say that they are looking at us as that alternative for South Africa.
Could you elaborate on the party's policy towards forming coalitions at the national level, especially in light of the current political dynamics as you've just laid out?
Yeah, coalitions are here to stay, and like in India and in Germany and many other countries, you'd find that the major party does not become majority because they have 50% plus one, but they work with other parties who have common values, common aims, a common vision to ensure that service delivery is utmost in their minds, and that the public and the constituencies benefit from the kind of good governance they offer. So for the first time, I think South Africa is going to go into coalitions at a national level. We've got coalitions at the local government level, but all predictions are that the ANC, who have been the majority party for a number of years, for the last 30 years, will dip below 50%, and they will be looking for partners. We, as the IFP, we've formed a loose alliance with 6 or 7 other parties where we share common values. We are in opposition to the ruling party at the moment in the national government. And hopefully, if we can get 50% plus one, it's called the multi-party charter, then we will form the government of the day.
What are the key issues that the IFP is focusing on in these upcoming elections? And how does the party plan to address the numerous challenges that are
being identified as most critical by your constituents and supporters?
Well, I think one of the big issues that's impacting on South Africa at the moment is the question of unemployment. And growing the economy is one of the cornerstones of our manifesto. And the way you grow the economy is for government to ensure that the environment for the private sector to invest is conducive. You have good roads, you have good ports, you have no load shedding, you have electricity available, you have regulations in place that would make it easier for businesses to start up, whether it's a large business or small and medium enterprises. And I think our government has failed us in that regard. The ANC government has failed us in that regard. Then educating our communities. I think in the last 30 years, the ANC government has not done justice to the millions of South Africans who fought hard for this democracy in ensuring that the type of education that's meted out is one that can compare with standards not only across Africa, but internationally. And if you don't have a society or don't have young people that are educated enough in skills that the country requires, then we're going to find this high rate of unemployment increasing. So that's another area that we're going to focus on, is unemployment. And then there's the issue of the provision of water. I mean, as we speak, I mean, South Africans are really in many parts, including large metros like Johannesburg, complaining about the fact that there's no water. And then we have water. Government and its agencies are not ensuring that the water is reticulated, and when you open your tap, you get water. We've allowed infrastructure to crumble to such an extent that that is the cause of many of our problems. So we would say that we want to invest in maintenance of infrastructure. A number of other areas, safety and security. I mean, many South Africans and non-South Africans who want to invest in South Africa are turned away because of the levels of crime in our country. And we believe as the IFP that this ANC government is not tough on crime. We've allowed mafia to penetrate every kind of industry, whether it's the building industry, the funeral industry, the tow truck industry, and the levels of corruption that we have, something that we don't see in many other countries in the world. And if we can stem corruption, especially at a government level, then you'll have more money available for the public.
Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison LaGrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. South Africa goes to the polls on the 29th of May. I will track the election and bring you ground reports. Is it the end of the road for the African National Congress? And will former President Jacob Zuma stage a dramatic comeback? From elections to climate change, to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost.